Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company, along with the paragon of adequacy, Jake Del Maro. Today we're talking about DDEX 2-13, The Howling Wind. Author Teos Abadia, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulach, and Travis Woodall. This is a 4-hour mod for Tier 2 play, tuned for 5 8th level characters. Party is sent to the Monastery of the Yellow Rose to assist the monks in purging the cult of Howling Wind. Module combines riddles, puzzles, combat, and exploration to test players. Part 1, the end is just the beginning. The party is sent to the Monastery of the Yellow Rose by a contact. The monastery has recently been embedded with cultists of howling hatred, and monks are initially untrusting of the party until they name drop who sent them. The party is set to the task of finding the mole in the monastery. Sister Talia was responsible for allowing the cult to make a foothold in their attempt to control an elemental node. In the crypt beneath the monastery, Talia leads the party to a portal granting access to the node. That node is protected by cultists. Jake, is another situation where not having factions really hamstrings buy-in. One of the major hooks for this mod is like a faction contact told you to go check out this monastery.
I don't actually agree with you on that one, Brian. Nope. The reason being is like this is following up on the Tempest Void. I can't speak English clearly. The 8-hour version
really
of this.
Part 3 of a series of 3 mods.
Yeah, so like realistically, the 8-hour can be skipped here. I'm not voting for it, but people don't always have 8 hours. If you're gonna run 8 hours, go run the last. Go run the last mod we were talking about. The Earth's by Mind. Don't worry about the Howling Void, or I think it's not Howling Void. Tempest.
Eye of the Tempest.
Don't worry about that one. Go run Earthspur Mines. Go have a blast with that. Skip that. Either way, there is buy-in. I think if they have done the Breath of the Yellow Rose, these are the same location start. I mean, you can always be like, well, the fad is having a resurgence. It's a problem. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like your party has established several contacts by this point. If you've been playing in season 2. Many people could have pointed them toward the monastery to go help out.
I mean, that's what I do all the time. I just tell them that Zora Culkin, tell them to go deal with something. And that's typically, they're like, is your house done? And they're like, probably by the time you get back.
Right. Yeah. Other than that, I think part 1 here is pretty straightforward.
I do like the woman though, because I always play her as the most ridiculous person ever, because she's the crypt keeper. Yeah. She's not a bad person. She's just like, the Breath of the Yellow Rose is all about sustenance upon like breathing and like smelling food. And she's like become, cynical about it. She's not necessarily a bad person. She's just like tired of her role. Yeah. And then like the way she's supposed to be played is like you were yanking her chain, like, oh, you got the info out of me. Like, you can make this the most dramatic or not dramatic sequence ever. Considering everything that's going to happen and confusing your players in the future, just know that this might be a spot for comic relief, and the adventure had just started.
Yeah, the adventure just started, and it's heavy stuff in part 2, and it's all like a lot, right?
Yes.
Like this module has 2 parts. This has been part 1. All of the rest of the module is part 2, and part 1 is maybe a half hour.
Maybe like that's a hard
if you include the combat.
I guess the combat. Which is also not a joking combat. This is the first time where we get the elemental, the hurricanes. Those monks can just beat you up. Like, what the other thing I want to note is from the tier 2 Eye of the Tempest. Is that the name? That is the name. That's the name now. We went from the Earthspur Mines, which was an average party level of 5 6-level characters. We have the Eye of the Tempest, which I would assume is near that, or it's either 5 level 8, if I remember correctly. You are making a very large jump. As a DM, be careful. Yeah. Because the next part is a non-stop beating players over the head with potential combat. And
combats are dealing hit point damage. Traps are dealing hit point damage.
Exactly.
Environmental hazards are dealing hit point damage. puzzles or dealing hit points. Yeah, there's a lot.
Just be careful as a DM here that like you're aware of your character's levels, because this could be like, oh, we're just gonna jump into the next one. Mm-hmm. Like your priority, to be completely honest, up until now, I'm not gonna mention any specific magic items, but like they are probably not as optimized as they should be. They could be, and that could lead to just difficult encounters with a lot of hit points and wasted resources. And they jump in and like, I need a long rest. It's like, you don't have that time. So just be careful as a DM that you don't just throw the entire kitchen sink. Not yet, because later on it's gonna make them strap for resources and do stupid stuff, or not stupid stuff, just super safe stuff. And it's like, I cast a spell. It's like I cast it. Just don't suck the fun out of it. But it is a cool introduction for the cults of Howling Hatred. They bring out their signature piece. Once you hit tier 3, and not tier 3, but if you're in they're cool guy. If you're playing in the book, this is their cool thing. They've got a monk that just throws a bunch of attacks at you and is neat. I love that, but just be careful with what you have. I would almost tune down, even if your characters are level 7, 6. I would just push it down anyway. Remove people, keep the hurricane, remove others.
Yeah, and I think that's where the juice is, right? That hurricane, that new encounter is the cool encounter. So if you're gonna cut stuff off this combat, do you need 7 cultists, or do you just have 3 and a hurricane, right? Moving into part 2, the node of evil elemental air. Through the portal is the node of elemental air that's been corrupted by the cult. The location has several descriptors, but the most interesting grants the party the ability to fly and levitate at the expense of health. In addition to the infiltration by the cult of Howling Wind, the cult of Black Earth has infiltrated the monastery with their own corruptive plans should the air cult fail. The node consists of 9 separate encounter trials that the party is responsible for 6 of. The arrival area, the sphere of corrupted humility are required, as well as the final showdown, but the others are up to DM's discretion. Predominantly, the node consists of puzzles that must be solved, occasionally during combat encounters, though single pillar encounters are present as well. Once a suitable number of nodes has been attempted, the final showdown occurs at the Storm Gate. The party's success on various nodes has an impact on the final battle. Jake, this is a wild setup for part 2 here. What resources do you need from the start to make this
DMs,
work?
If this is your first one, turn it away. Go to a different one.
This is
also, you shouldn't be starting in tier 2, but this
is not a first timers. There's a lot to manage here.
This gives me anxiety. This mod is a cool mod, awesome mod, but I feel like I needed like a high or a elementary school or middle school lab or science fair project. I need the
solar system thing.
Yeah, right? I need that. So to start on it, you run into an encounter with potentially 2 helmed horrors. Let me just say that again. 2 helmed horrors after you just got out of a fight with a hurricane that was beating you up. Cool. Awesome. Great. DC or AC 1920 guys just beating up on you because they can. So you mentioned a very important part. They have 6, and I'll say it again very clearly, 6 slots of info to do, or slots of things they can do. 3 of them are accounted for. The amphitheater, which is the fight, or somebody casts Dispel Magic. If somebody jumps in, I kind of like giving them a little bit of benefit of a doubt. If I had this happen, was our Valor Bard runs in and he's like, I don't want to fight that. Take a 3rd level slot, Dispel Magic. I was like, DC blank. Because he was willing to waste a 3rd level spell, use a spell slot.
That's his top slot, yeah.
That's his top slot at this area. We've only run a handful of tier 2s, 6, 7 ish, 7, 8 tops. I think he was actually 6 or 7. He's willing to push a 3rd level spell slot to dispel that. you did it in such a fast manner. Cool, awesome, neat. You can have that, and I'll let you just fast forward this, and you'll have an extra time. But the thing is there is later on in the for the DM notes, you need to be, as a DM, very proactive and aware. This is something you print out, you write down wherever. You note where the Howling Hatred's going to be and the Black Earth is going to be, because if they show up, depending on what kind of DM you are, I've heard that I'm a Care Bear DM. I think we've mentioned that before. But if they end up at a location that's already been visited, that is a counted for slot. If they've been to the prison afterwards, they've lost their spot. That took time to travel there.
Yeah, and I guess just to backpedal a little bit, essentially when we're looking at this module, it's essentially an orbital system, right? We've got like the storm gate in the middle, which is the node itself, as well as a portal to the elemental plane of air where an evil army is waiting. You've got the arrival amphitheater, but like there's 8 locations that are revolving around the storm gate at different speeds, right? It's not just like everything shifts once. You've got a situation where 4 of them are on one rotation, the rest are on another. In my mind, the only way to present this information to your players effectively, the fastest way to do it, is to print off a bunch of copies of this map, cut them out in layers based off the orbit they're on, and get one of those like elementary school Brad things and stick it through the middle and just have a wheel. Like it's a lot to keep track of. I think if it's done well, it can be really entertaining and exciting, but like you need to make sure as a DM you're bringing all the tools you need to communicate what's going on to the table. And maybe that is an arts and crafts project, right? Like maybe you need to take a half hour or 40 minutes and like build out this visual representation to your party members. And maybe you include another piece of paper that is like, it's like a clock arm that says like Earth Cult, and another one that says Air Cult, and they rotate also. But the tools you bring to this table are going to be the make or break point for running this mod effectively and communicating what's going on effectively.
This is not a mod that I've ran this a few times already, but this is not a mod that I enjoyed running online.
It's tough.
And players, if they can't just conceptualize it, like we all don't have a party that works the same brain, like that we all do. But I would probably, with how I described it, I would probably even just struggle understanding how I described it. Like, it's not an easy thing to do. You just have to be very careful. The safest thing to do is they have to go to the first sphere. They're going to see it above them. Your amphitheater is going to teleport them to it. They do it quickly, maybe give them an extra thing to go mess around with. But, like, that's where they can acquire a ship. They can skip the whole, like, where is everything going to be? Get a ship. Then where do you want to go? That's all you got to take. Where do you want to go? My one critique that I don't know why this was not included in this mod is aerial combat. Because it's like, if you go see a ship that's leaving there and you know it's not friendly, just go take it over. I don't know.
Especially in a module that tells you how to fly as a character, right? It costs you hit points, but like you can physically fly to that ship.
You also have an airship that's manned by a Kenku airship crew.
Right.
Like, you can just be like, hit them.
Yeah.
Crash into them. Take over their ship. You got 2 ships now.
Yeah.
Like,
I will say,
make it fun.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like that's a situation that's going to be like dependent on DM prep, DM tools, player buy-in, player focus. Like a lot of time, like it's possible that your players just aren't engaged, and it doesn't matter what you're going to do to like get them motivated. But ultimately, like there's a lot to keep track of here. This is not like a beginner mod to run.
No.
It's not. I mean, it's a tough mod to like conceptualize in my own head, having run a lot for 20 years, right?
I would even go as far to say, like, I know you love Shadows of the Moon Sea.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weird concept that's put in there, like defending your location, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like very like coolly tower defense put in, but like I've never had an input on it.
Mm-hmm.
This one is like more difficult than that. I mean, that mod is a good mod. It's an
Mm-hmm.
awesome mod. Top 10 easy.
Sure.
But like the concept in it is awesome. The concept in this one is awesome. But like I cannot stress to a DM enough that if you are not prepared or do not want to put in the time, choose a different mod. Yeah. This is a fun mod, but like
and look, like this really is all voluntary, right? Like, and it's a situation where like if you don't have the time, don't worry about it. There are 3,000 other modules that you can run instead of this mod.
But it doesn't make it a bad mod.
It's not bad. It can be very rewarding for folks who have the time to put in to make it a very rewarding mod. Yeah. Otherwise, it can be very frustrating for everybody involved. Like, you're really taking on some responsibility here when you're like, I'm going to run this module. It's a challenge.
This is 100% on the DM. This is not a... It's like, if you can't describe this, like, you will get lost in descriptions and everyone's going to want to like just put a brick through their head. It's like, I mean, realistically, this is a tough mod, and it's not to say it's not a rewarding mod, because I think if let's say you get through the bulk of part 2, like there's cool locations. You got the Aarakocra, you've got a temple, you got a prison, you got the spheres.
Puzzles, like
there's a absurdity of like of random magic items. Like, not necessarily like I'm gonna talk about what's there, but like if you have a smaller group, they just suddenly have a bunch of resources to like happen around the map. Like, it's cool. But like if you get through that part, it says specifically in the last part of the mod, or the last part of part 2, when you get to the Stormgate, it is a thematic fight. I had, during my encounter, or my last run through of this, the 2 spellcasters get pretty much just vaulted off their ships. They don't have fly for whatever reason, because they're wind cultists. So you would think they would have fly. They don't. They got thrown off, and it was awesome. Reward your players if they've been active, if they've enjoyed the puzzles, which are completely doable without skipping half the crap.
And they're puzzles that I haven't seen before, right?
Yes.
Like that's the thing is like so often we see like riddles and puzzles that like are carbon copy D&D riddles. Yeah. These are new and like exciting and like not tried and true puzzles and riddles, and it's nice to see that. It's refreshing.
It's cool. You could do this entire adventure just hitting the 4 golden orbs or the spheres. You could just do that, and it's going to be a good mod. Like,
I mean, the capstone fight alone is cool, right? You're dealing with an elemental air myrmidon. Like,
potentially.
That's cool. Like, I mean, yeah, potentially. But, like, it's a cool capstone. After you fight his wizard form, right? Like,
unless it gets vaulted off the off the ship. But, like, either way, it's a very neat end fight. I'm someone that because I like throwing softballs at people, not literal, like I like throwing like toilet paper, like softballs at people, like bounty balls at people. Like, it's nice when I can thematically explain, hey, I would like to do this. Well, this guy didn't come prepared for this kind of fight apparently, and you just threw him off the side, and now he's plummeting to the bottom of this air node, and he's got no way. He will kill himself on the way down trying to fly. And
here's what I'll say about that, though, is like I am of the opinion that, and like this shows up in our homebrew stuff, it shows up when I run tables, like the map is the map, the tactics are the tactics.
Yep.
Right? The players are the things that are the wild card. Right? And like if you're dealing with a cult who has a plan, and a cultist that is like a militant person like this, they're going to have a standard operating procedure, and it's not altogether unreasonable that your players interrupt that in like a dramatic way that is altogether unpredicted by the enemy, that they don't have a counter to, right?
Brian,
Like,
I'm gonna say unfortunately you were not there, but in fact everything that happened that I've said has been an issue. The fact that they commandeered a second ship, and what happened was my three players. What they did was they smashed into the main ship, ends first into the side, causing it a jolt, killing the Kenku crew on the enemy board because of bludgeoning damage from the shock alone from hitting the ships. And then it was only 2 guys left.
yeah.
And both of them got thrown. The first guy kind of got how I imagine it was like somersaulted, grabbed, thrown off the ship. And then my Valor Bard just was like, yeah, I'm gonna pretty much make that happen again. And I was like, awesome. You know what? Cool. You know what? You guys did super cool things. I'm gonna reward you because not because of pity, but because you guys did some cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not gonna penalize you.
I think that's the thing to keep in mind here is like it's listed as a 4-hour module. If your party does wild nonsense that makes it a 2-hour module and they have a good time, like who cares?
I did my job.
Right?
Like,
as long
I'm
as
going to
everybody
pat
walks away
myself
from
on
the
back.
table pleased, like I got to do bonkers things and we won the adventure.
Thank God Ron wasn't there. This would have been even faster.
Yeah. You know?
Saying.
You know, and like I think like it's easy to get like as a DM, it's easy to get discouraged because like the party is trivializing your combats, right?
I've gotten over that. I'll be honest with you, Brian.
Sure. But
because of you,
but I think it's important, and not just as a wackadoo player, but also as a DM. I think it's important to remember, like, what is the purpose that we are all sitting at this table? Is it to like go through and like pay homage to this author and run his module, or is it to sit down at a table and enjoy each other's company and have fun and play a game? Right?
You're right. Absolutely. I'm not going to penalize someone. I think the worst thing that any DM can do, I mean, granted, if they underlevel things, like, is just
you want to
take
challenge
away
the party.
but I don't want to take away if they've got a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, there's times where it's like when somebody says to me, I didn't get to hit the entire time, and I'm like, cool, like, but did you have fun?
Yeah.
Or if he says no, then I'll be like, you clearly did not get into the fun. Like, that's not my problem. If you know who I'm engaging with,
sure.
and if people think that that's fun, and it's like, oh, I just 100% at a level, and I didn't take any damage. I'm like, cool, dude. Like, great for you. Like,
and I think like part of that is like communicating to your players that like to find ways to engage in their characters in all 3 pillars of play. Right, even if they're not built for that, like your barbarian is not built for exploration and stealth. But finding ways to encourage them to like engage in those pillars is a way to avoid the notion of like, I didn't get to hit anything, so I didn't have fun.
No, right? I actually will push it one step further. Your barbarian, I think, is just as equipped to go into exploration.
Sure.
The reason being, I actually had, and I'll shout it out, Gamehole Con, when I was knee deep in being crazy and running 4 times a week. I had it was about 3 years ago. I had a DM who was like, it was one of the tier 2s trying to figure out a puzzle, and our wizard could not figure out an intelligence check if there's no rhyme or reason to the puzzle, which is no problem with, but it was like an intelligence check, which kind of stinks sometimes, but
sure.
It is what it is. And I was like, I'm gonna use my barbarian, I'm gonna yell at the puzzle. And he said, yeah, roll an intimidation check. And if you're coming to me, any viewer here, if you find me at a table and you come up with some wacky stuff like that, you are most certainly getting a roll to get this thing done.
Right.
Because if that is the way you want to solve it, go for it. I think it's funny because then I'm like, you gotta tell me what you said.
Yeah, I mean, like, and for me as a DM, that's exciting because like the first thing that goes through my head when somebody's like, I'm not good at digging. Can I acrobatics a hole in the ground? I'm like, all right, let's see how this is going to work out. Like, what is your plan here?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you got to give me some details here, Chief.
Probably. Let's find out, Like, And those are exciting things, like as a DM, to come up with creative things to throw at my players later on. They're exciting things to get other players to engage with each other more, to engage in the narrative more. Like there's so much going on.
Yeah, if it happens early on and like a new player tests that for me, I can almost expect an amazing session.
Mm-hmm.
Because when somebody says, yeah, I'm gonna need to I'm gonna try to blow out the torch with my breath. And I'm like, yeah, how do you want to do it? And they're like, can I run around it really quick? I'm like, I guess, I don't know. Like you could just put it out, but sure.
I would say that like, that is why I love green players, right? That's why I love playing with new people, is they don't have the preconceived like knowledge of like what is the optimal thing to do here. They're just like, I don't know, we have a problem, there are no bad ideas, let's try this wackadoo thing. Oh, it worked. Great.
I'll be honest, like, I did the same crap when I was my friend who actually introduced me to D&D. He did this for me. He said, we're rolling initiative, and I was like, oh no. And like I don't remember what it was, like 3-5 or something like that before I became a 5 loyalist. Mm-hmm. But it was like 3-5, and I was like, I'm gonna be super cool about it. I'm gonna throw a thing of oil at him. And then I said to him, I was like, can I like drag my my sword across the ground to spark it onto him? And he goes, no, Jake, you're an idiot, but I'll let it happen because you're an idiot. And I was like, I rolled to like hit the ground hard enough to cause a spark and make it hot enough. I rolled like a 3, but like it felt good.
You got the roll, right? Like
felt cinematic.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like from a DM's perspective, like a player can try whatever they want and make a roll, and maybe the DC is 38, but like go ahead and
There's
try.
A chance. If you crit it, I'm going to give it to you. Like, even though that's not necessarily how ability checks roll, but if it's that obscure, if it's a 19 fail, 18 fail, crit absolutely happening. Yeah. Like there is a statistical chance that regardless of what happens, it may happen, or
and
like it could happen.
Like and the other thing about that is like I am far more interested in why things didn't work than when they did, right? Like you tried to swing your sword at the ground and spark
what
the
happened?
oil. Why did you fail so badly? Why couldn't you do it, right? like I'm not a guy who's like, oh, you crit. How did you crit him? I'm like, ooh, you rolled a 1. How did you do that badly?
You rolled. Like, everyone watched you, and it was embarrassing.
Tell me how badly you did.
You didn't even make contact with the ground. Like, and you were making sound. Whoosh.
Right.
And you got inspiration. You know what? You explain it, you're getting inspiration.
Right. Absolutely. And I think like this is a perfect module for like exploring those options, but you have to be prepared. You have to have a table that you can communicate to effectively. You have to have the tools to make that happen.
Yeah.
Other than that, like it's a challenging module, but I think it can be a very rewarding module. This will be another one of those flagship mods where if you run it well, people will be like, "Oh man, that elemental air node mod was really cool when so and so ran it." And if you don't, the problem is with this mod, there's no middle ground, right? There's no 6 in this mod. It's a 10 or a 2. Right?
Well, I'd even go as far to say is even the first time I ran this thing, which I think I probably had read it at least 6 times at that point, making sure I knew everything in and out. That performance that I had, because everything as a DM, it is a performance. You are giving something. You are giving a product that is part of you. At least that's how I feel about DMing. I know, Brian, you're a very passionate DM yourself, but like I could never have given that same performance. That was something that was like once in a lifetime. If I look back at like Jake's greatest hits, this might be in that. Like this might be there because like it is a tough mod. Understanding it in and of itself should be a DM reward by like alone.
Yeah.
And then being able to explain it should be like 6 more. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a tough mod. Do not take it lightly.
Right. Read it 3 or 4 times. Like,
if things start going awry, just start flying with it because you're not going to get it back on track. I think that's all I could really say to a DM that's trying to run this thing. Like, if it flies off the cuff, you are now off the cuff. try your best to get it back on track. It's not going to happen.
Or just enjoy where you're at, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to get it back to where it's supposed to be. So just like lean in and ride it out.
It's a sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
It's what it is.
After the showdown with the cult leader Stormgale, either the party successfully stopped the ritual or they failed, and an army of evil air elementals have invaded Mulemaster. If the ritual is stopped, the monks offer thanks, provide a feast in the character's honor. They give like non-mechanical reward, like notoriety rewards.
I just like the fact that it's kind of like you succeed or you just let an army of evil in.
Yeah, there's no
sorry.
Ground, yeah. You stop the ritual or you've ended the world as you know it. Anyway, there it is, DDEX 2-13, The Howling Void. Thank you so much for listening to some advice to streamline and run it at your tables. Be a good neighbor, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, and MySpace. And from now until the next time, roll together.